The airport smelled of longing and forgotten dreams. As Fifi stepped off the plane onto familiar African soil, she clutched her single worn-out suitcase like a shield. The weight of her deception pressed against her chest. For months, she had pretended she was thriving in the UK, fabricated stories, filtered pictures, messages crafted to keep her family's pride intact. But the truth was far from glamorous. The Uber ride home was quiet. The landscape blurred past, red earth, mango trees, the echoes of laughter from roadside vendors. She rolled down the window, inhaling the thick air of home. She was back, but not in the way she had planned. Her father stood in the doorway, his eyes shining with pride. Her mother's embrace was a blanket of warmth. The family danced and sang, celebrating the prodigal daughter's return. But then came the moment. "You were deported?" Her father's voice cut through the celebration like a knife. "What did you do?" Her mother stepped back, the joy draining from her face. Fifi opened her mouth, but the words twisted and knotted in her throat. She wanted to explain, wanted to tell them about the struggles, the nights she cried alone, the job she lost, the mistake that led to her deportation. But no one wanted to listen. The whispers started before she could unpack. By morning, the village was buzzing. Some pitied her, some scorned her, and some watched, waiting for her next move. Her father told her he can't provide for her. She should be married by now. "What is your plan?" he asked. "You can't stay here." "But Dad, I bought this house for you and so?" The dad said. "You my daughter, that's what you need to do." She knew then, she had to leave the house. Fifi stood outside the house she had paid for, her hands trembling as she clutched her suitcase. The voices of her family still echoed in her ears, harsh, unforgiving, filled with betrayal. "How could you come back like this? How could you shame us?" They had turned their backs on her. The house, the one she had sent money for every month, the one she had dreamed of returning to, was no longer hers. The streets swallowed her whole. On the first night, she sat beneath the old baobab tree near the market, watching the vendors pack up their goods. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but she swallowed it down. The wind was cold, whispering past her like it knew her pain. By the third day, she had become invisible. People walked past her as if she were part of the dust. The whispers in the village had shifted, pity had turned into judgment. The same hands that had clapped for her success now pointed at her downfall. On the fifth day she thought of leaving, walking beyond the village, disappearing into a place where no one knew her name. But where would she go? What would she do? By the seventh day, Fifi was weak. The world around her had become a blur. She barely noticed the figure standing before her. "Fifi, is that really you?" She looked up. The voice was familiar, laced with memories of childhood. It was Findy, her childhood friend, the one who had always believed in her, even when they were children dreaming under the mango tree. Findy knelt beside her, eyes scanning the bruises of abandonment on her skin. "Come with me." Fifi didn't have the strength to refuse. She let herself be pulled up, let herself lean into the warmth of someone who still saw her as more than a failure. Not everyone had turned away. Not everyone had forgotten who she was. Fifi never told Findy the truth. She let the story of her deportation linger in the air, unchallenged, like a shadow that followed her every step. It was easier that way, easier than explaining what had really happened. Easier than admitting the decisions that had led her here. Findy's family welcomed her, not with grand celebrations, but with quiet acceptance. They made space for her in their small home, a structure made of rusted tin and patched walls that told stories of struggle. Some nights, the family sat around a small fire, sharing the last of the Mayalai meal, stretching it to feed everyone. There were no complaints, no bitterness, only the silent understanding that tomorrow would be just another fight for survival. Fifi watched Findy's mother cut the bread into equal portions, giving everyone just enough to quell their hunger. Even in scarcity, there was generosity. She slept on a thin mattress laid out in the corner of the room, beneath the same leaking roof that sheltered them all. Rain trickled through cracks, the cold seeping into her bones. But still, she had a place to rest her head. From time to time, Fifi thought about her family's betrayal. The house she had paid for. The people who had thrown her out without hesitation. The whispers of the village, the mocking glances, the disdain disguised as pity. She carried the weight of it all, pressed deep into her chest, suffocating. Yet Findy never asked too many questions. She never probed into the truth that Fifi refused to share. She simply existed beside her, offering companionship, survival, and an escape from the silence in Fifi's mind. One afternoon, she walked to the river, craving solitude. The water glistened in the sunlight, the rocks beneath her feet slick with moss. She stepped too quickly. The world tilted. Her body slammed against the jagged edge of a rock. A sharp pain ripped through her leg. She screamed. Voices rushed toward her. Fifi was among them, fear etched across her face. The villagers carried her to the nearest hospital, but when they arrived, the harsh reality settled in. Fifi had nothing. She pleaded with the doctor, hands shaking, voice cracking, tears threatening to fall. "She needs help, please." The doctor's face was impassive. "Payment must be made before we proceed." Fifi searched her pockets. Nothing. She begged. The nurses turned her away. Fifi was drugged to ease the pain, her body sinking into oblivion, unaware of the battle raging around her. And then, without hesitation, Fifi's father did the unthinkable. He sold his only land, the land that had fed them, the land they had held on to even in their worst struggles, the land that was supposed to be his daughter's future. All for a woman who had kept her secrets buried. Lying in that hospital bed, her leg wrapped in bandages, Fifi realized something. She had nothing, but Fifi's family had given her everything. Fifi woke to the rhythmic beeping of the hospital monitor, the dull ache in her leg a reminder of her fall, and of the sacrifices made for her. She turned to Fifi's father, eyes heavy with guilt. "Papa, you shouldn't have sold your farm. That land was everything to you." Fifi's father smiled, his face worn with quiet resilience. "Don't worry, my daughter. It's nothing." But to Fifi, it was everything. Fifi lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, her leg wrapped in bandages, her body weak. But the pain in her limb was nothing compared to the ache in her chest. Fifi's father had sacrificed everything for her. His land, his future. And Fifi had given her love with nothing in return. She had taken Fifi in without conditions, without expectations. How had she been so selfish? For days, the weight of it pressed down on her. Each time Fifi's mother brought her food, each time Fifi helped her sit up, each time her father reassured her that the land was just land, she felt the guilt suffocate her. She had hidden too much. She had kept herself small, locked in shame. It was time to change that. Fifi inhaled sharply, steadying herself. The deception had gone on too long. She had taken and taken, hiding behind the illusion of helplessness, allowing others to bleed for her, while she held the key to something greater. She reached for the phone. Her assistant picked up instantly, as if waiting for this call. "It's time," Fifi whispered. "Finalize the second phase. Don't tell anyone." For a moment, there was silence on the other end. Then, a quiet confirmation. "Understood." The wheels were already turning. Beyond the hospital walls, beyond the village whispers, beyond the betrayal, Fifi's empire had never crumbled. The name she had built abroad, the connections she had nurtured, the resources she had hidden, they were still there waiting. She had lost her family's trust. She had been cast into the streets. She had suffered. But she was not broken. It was time to reclaim what was hers. Within hours, funds were being moved. Quiet transfers, discreet conversations, signed agreements. A shipment had already landed on the coast, her investment, her security, the foundation of her return. By nightfall, Fifi sat upright, her leg throbbing, but her mind clear. The next day, when Fifi entered the hospital room, exhausted, still wearing the same clothes from the night before, Fifi reached for her hand. "You don't know what you've done for me," Fifi said softly. "And I'm going to repay you for it." Fifi frowned, shaking her head. "You don't need to repay us. You're family now." Fifi smiled. She was family. But soon, she would be so much more. Her second phase was in motion. And no one, not even the ones who had abandoned her, was ready for what was coming. Fifi didn't just want to say thank you, she wanted to change everything. Fifi's family had taken her in when she had nothing. They had fed her when they barely had food for themselves. And her father, he had sacrificed his land, the very foundation of their survival for her. She couldn't let that stand. Her second phase was already in motion. Within days, papers were signed, accounts were adjusted, and silent transactions paved the road for what was coming. But she never let Findy's family know. The morning Fifi left the hospital, she didn't return to Findy's home. Instead, she looked at Findy's parents and said, "I have something to do. It may take a day or two." Findy tried to ask where she was going, but Fifi only smiled, a glimmer of something unreadable in her eyes. 2 days passed. Findy sat outside with her parents, the evening breeze carrying the scent of burning firewood and fresh earth. They spoke about survival, about what they would do now without the land. Then, a sleek black SUV rolled into the yard. Findy's mother sat up, frowning. "Who could that be?" "I don't know, Mama," Findy whispered, watching as the car came to a stop. "Who would even visit us driving such a car?" They stared frozen, as the driver's door opened. And then, stepping out with effortless grace, dressed in quiet confidence, was Fifi. Findy's mother gasped. "Fifi, is that you?" Findy stood, eyes wide. "Whose car is this?" Fifi smiled, the warmth of home settling into her skin. "This?" she said, glancing at the car like it was nothing. "This is just the beginning." Findy's mother stood frozen, still staring at the black SUV, her mind struggling to process what was happening. Findy narrowed her eyes, scanning Fifi's confident stance, the subtle shift in her demeanor. This wasn't the same woman who had come to them with nothing. Something had changed. "Fifi," Findy's father said slowly, "what is going on?" Fifi grinned, swinging the car keys around her fingers. "Why don't we go for a ride?" Findy exchanged a glance with her parents. Suspicion, curiosity, hesitation. But Fifi's energy was infectious, and before they knew it, they were sliding into the plush seats of the car, their bodies sinking into comfort they had never known. As Fifi drove through the village, the road stretched beneath them like paths to an unknown future. Findy's mother kept looking around, rubbing her hands together as if she wasn't sure she was supposed to be sitting in such luxury. Findy sat stiffly, still processing the shift in her friend, the quiet confidence, the way she held herself, the way she knew exactly what she was doing. After 20 minutes, Fifi pulled up to the outskirts of the village, where the land stretched wide beneath the morning sun. Then they saw it. A house. Not just a house, but a home. Strong walls, large windows, space to breathe, to grow. Findy gasped. Her mother clutched her chest. Her father remained silent, his eyes shining in disbelief. Fifi turned to them, her voice soft but unwavering. This is yours." Findy's mother's knees buckled, tears spilling as she whispered, "No, no. Fifi, this is too much." Fifi shook her head. "It's not enough." Findy looked at her, words failing her. "Fifi, how?" Fifi smiled, the weight of secrecy finally lifting. "This is only the beginning." Findy's mother clutched her chest, eyes darting between the towering home and Fifi, trying to reconcile what was happening. Findy's father had barely moved, his silence stretching as he took in the sheer grandeur before him. Findy stepped forward, touching the smooth walls like she needed proof that it was real. "Fifi, this is too much." Fifi's smile was knowing but measured. "It's not just a house," she said, stepping past them, pushing open the grand wooden doors. Inside, the scent of polished wood, fresh linen and something warm, spices, comfort, home, filled the air. Every room stood ready, fully furnished, decorated with care, designed not just for survival, but for living. "The kitchen is stocked too," Fifi added, leading them toward it. "You won't have to worry about food for a long time." Findy's mother's lips trembled as she touched the counters, peered inside cabinets stacked with groceries, and ran her fingers over the soft cushions in the sitting room. Findy turned to Fifi, shaking her head, eyes brimming with emotion. How did you do this?" Fifi just chuckled, crossing her arms. "Let's just say, I had a plan all along." The mystery lingered. She wouldn't reveal everything. Not yet. This was only the beginning. That evening, Fifi sat in the heart of her new family's home, the air thick with warmth, gratitude, and unspoken curiosity. The glow of the lanterns bathed the room in soft gold, casting shadows that danced against the walls. Findy's mother had prepared a feast, nothing extravagant, but enough to mark the occasion. Steaming pap, roasted vegetables, tender pieces of goat stew. It was the best meal they had had in months, and tonight, for the first time in a long time, they ate without worry. Yet even as laughter bubbled around the table, suspense lingered in the air. Findy's father leaned forward, arms crossed. "Fifi," he began, his voice steady, but tinged with curiosity, "you've done something no one expected. You gave us a home, stocked our kitchen, changed our lives. But how?" Findy sat beside him, nodding eagerly. "Where did all this come from?" Fifi smirked, taking a slow sip of her tea. She could feel the weight of their gazes, the anticipation crackling in the air like a fire on the verge of roaring to life. She placed her cup down and began. She spoke of her struggles in the UK, not the lies she had told, but the real battles. The long nights, the losses, the failures. The things she had never let slip before. She told them about the moment everything fell apart. About how she had returned home with nothing. Findy's mother wiped a tear. Findy's father listened in silence. But there was one thing she didn't reveal. Findy glanced at her hesitantly. "And then?" Fifi stretched her arms, leaning back against the chair with a knowing smile. "And then, I decided it was time to rebuild." She left it at that. The suspense thickened. Findy's father narrowed his eyes, sensing the gap in her story. "You aren't telling us everything, are you?" Fifi chuckled, shaking her head. "Not yet." She wasn't telling them everything. Because the next surprise, the final piece of her grand plan, was still waiting. Tonight, she would let them enjoy their home, their comfort, their joy. Tomorrow, the real truth will come. The morning light poured through the windows, golden and soft, washing over the breakfast table where Findy's family sat, savoring a meal without worry. For the first time in years, there was no need to plan what to cook, to stretch the last grains of maize, to wonder how long the food would last. Everything was there. Shelves are full. Fridge stocked. Security in abundance. Findy's mother glanced at Fifi several times, an unspoken question hovering on her lips. Findy's father ate in silence, but his eyes carried the weight of curiosity. Fifi smiled to herself. They were starting to feel it, to know that life was different now. As breakfast plates emptied and the morning settled into calm, Fifi pushed back her chair. "Come with me," she said simply. Findy frowned. "Where?" "You'll see." Excitement rippled through the air as they followed her outside. The black SUV stood gleaming under the rising sun. Findy's mother hesitated before stepping inside, still not fully convinced she belonged in such luxury. Fifi drove with quiet confidence, the tires rolling smoothly over the dusty village road. She turned onto a new path, one Findy's family had never taken before. Then, she pulled up in front of something that stole their breath. The farm. Their farm. The land Findy's father had sold. Now, restored, expanded, thriving. Findy's father staggered back, gripping the car door, eyes wide. Findy's mother covered her mouth, choking back a gasp. Fifi stepped forward, hands in her pockets. "I told you, this is only the beginning." Findy's father didn't move. He stood there, staring at the land before him, his hands limp at his sides. The farm. His farm. The land he had surrendered, the soil he had tilled with his own hands, the inheritance he had sacrificed for Fifi's surgery. Now standing before him again, restored, expanded, thriving. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Findy clutched her mother's arm, her voice barely above a whisper. This isn't possible." Fifi watched them, taking in every emotion, the disbelief, the awe, the sheer inability to process what had just happened. Findy's father took a step forward, then another, walking slowly toward the land like a man in a dream. He knelt down, grasping a handful of the soil, letting it crumble through his fingers. It was real. It was his. He turned to Fifi, his voice hoarse. "How?" Findy stepped forward, shaking her head, frustration creeping into her voice. "No, seriously, how did you do this, Fifi? You showed up with nothing. You lived with us in a house that could barely hold us. You had nothing. And now this." She motioned toward the farm, her eyes wild with confusion. Fifi let out a slow breath, the moment stretching longer, the tension thickening. Findy's mother blinked rapidly, her hands still clutching her chest. "Fifi, my daughter, tell us the truth. What is happening?" Fifi smiled, but there was something unreadable behind it. "The truth," she said softly. She took a deep breath, holding their gaze. Then finally, she said, I never lost everything. Silence fell. Findy took a sharp step forward. What do you mean? Fifi lifted her chin. I hid it. From everyone. I let them believe I had nothing. I let the village whisper about me, let my family throw me out, let you take me in without questioning. I wanted to see. I needed to know. Findy's father straightened, eyes narrowing. Know what? Fifi's voice was steady now, stronger. Who would stand beside me when I had nothing? Findy inhaled sharply. I needed to know who loved me without expecting anything in return, Fifi continued. And you gave me love with nothing. And so, you deserve everything. Findy's mother collapsed onto her knees, tears spilling freely. Findy covered her mouth, her breath uneven. Findy's father turned away briefly, blinking hard as if he were fighting something deeper than words. And Fifi? She just stood there watching, waiting for them to understand. The truth had finally come. But the surprises weren't over. Findy stepped back, arms crossed, brows furrowed, her breath uneven. She was struggling, really struggling, to reconcile what she had just heard. So you had everything, she whispered, almost to herself. You had resources, power, money, and you let us believe you were at rock bottom? You let us sacrifice what little we had. Her voice carried a mix of disbelief and anger, the betrayal settling deep in her chest. Fifi held her gaze, unwavering. I needed to know who was truly in my corner, Findy. I needed to see who would love me without conditions. Findy exhaled sharply, shaking her head. But that wasn't fair. You let my father sell our land. You let my mother scrape together food for you when we had nothing. You let me worry about you every day. And all that time, you were just watching us. She wasn't yelling. She didn't need to, her disappointment was loud enough. Findy's father had remained quiet, staring at the farm, letting the reality sink in. His fingers brushed over the soil absently, as if grounding himself in the truth. After several long moments, he finally spoke. I don't know what to say, Fifi. His voice was calm, but laced with deep thought. I am grateful. I am. You have done something I never imagined possible. You returned what I lost, and more. But I cannot pretend that I understand your choice. Fifi nodded, taking in his words with the weight they deserved. I know, she admitted. And I won't ask you to. Just know that this was never about testing you. It was about finding myself again, knowing who I could trust, knowing who truly cared. Findy pressed her fingers against her temple, frustration still simmering. I don't know if I should feel honored or betrayed. Fifi reached for her friend's hand, squeezing it gently. Feel whatever you need to feel, she murmured. But please, know this wasn't meant to hurt you. It was meant to lift you. To lift all of you. Findy's father finally let out a small, tired sigh. I may not understand it yet, Fifi. But what is done is done. And if you still stand beside us, if you still call us your family, then that is all that matters now. Findy swallowed, uncertainty still flickering in her eyes. But she nodded. I just need time, she whispered. And Fifi, for the first time in a long time, understood exactly what that meant. Findy sat in silence, her emotions tangled, still grappling with the truth of Fifi's deception, but something else was bubbling beneath it, the undeniable fact that everything had changed. They had a house. They had food. They had their land back. And now, without knowing it yet, Findy had something even greater waiting for her. Fifi took a slow breath before speaking. You deserve more, Findy. Findy frowned, still processing everything. What do you mean? Fifi turned fully to face her, her expression serious but filled with warmth. I see how hard you work for your family. How much you give, how much you sacrifice. But you have dreams too, Findy. And it's time someone gave you the chance to chase them. Findy's mother lifted her head, curiosity flickering in her tired eyes. Findy leaned forward slightly, still cautious. Fifi, what are you saying? Fifi smiled, reaching for something in her bag, a set of documents, folded neatly, waiting for their moment. She slid them across the table. Findy hesitated before picking them up, unfolding them with slow, nervous fingers. Her breath hitched. Her mother gasped. Her father leaned in, scanning the words carefully. It was an acceptance letter. A scholarship. A path that led far beyond the village. Findy's name was printed clearly at the top, next to the university's crest, a place where she would study medicine, where she would become something greater, something lasting. She clutched the letter tightly, her hands trembling. Fifi, no. You will be a doctor, Findy. Fifi's voice was firm, gentle, and undeniable. And you will lift this family even higher. Tears filled Findy's eyes as she stared down at the paper, then back at her friend, the woman she had loved, protected, struggled beside, and now, the woman who had rewritten her entire future. She had been angry. But now? She was simply grateful. And for the first time in her life, she dared to dream. Fifi's journey is far from over. She has rebuilt herself, lifted Findy's family from poverty, and set a new path for their future. But now, whispers have begun to spread. Her real parents have heard of what she has done, and they want to reconcile. Will she forgive them? Will she accept them back, or will she finally confront the past they left her to endure? Thank you for watching Granny G Stories. Please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on part 2 of the story.